spotlight guest is a coworker of mine, so I wouldn't want him to think
There you go.
ill. So at least
Mm.
through his segment, I'll try to keep it dialed in, inwards, inwards, inwards.
Well, great. So that's a great segue. So we have our Truth Lie Shenanigans Spotlight tonight. Our guest is Cyrus Hampton. There he is. Hey, Cyrus, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing pretty all right. How are you all doing?
Doing really, really good.
Doing well.
Happy to have you here.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you all so much for having me on.
Thank you. All right, let me introduce you to Cyrus. Cyrus Hampton is an instructor and the assistant director of the first year writing program at Howard University. He teaches English and writing and has a penchant for using sci-fi and music videos in the classroom. He has a history of activism, most recently working with the Ida B. Wells Education Project, and a group aimed at providing free anti-racist teaching tools, training, and support for classroom educators, created by classroom educators. He has been volunteering with the union effort for Howard University's lecturers and instructors since arriving at Howard in 2017. Again, we do thank you for joining us, Cyrus.
Welcome,
Yeah, it's really good to be here.
So, Cyrus, tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, what you're doing at Howard.
Yeah. So I'm originally from DC, and one of my best friends, her mom worked at Howard, and so I was always hearing all this really fantastic stuff about it. And so then I ended up going to Howard for my undergrad, and it was a fantastic experience. And so then that sort of projected me, like so many people from Howard, into further education and further learning. And so after grad school, I was talking with one of my old mentors, and she was saying we need some more good people in the English department. Do you want to come teach? You want to come be a lecturer? So that's not a tenure track role, but I was really excited with the thought of sort of coming back to Howard and getting to be a part of the learning that so many people, the positive learning that I got. I really wanted to give that to other people. So I jumped at the chance and came back to DC to work at Howard, and it was exciting and fantastic, but probably as Lizzie might be able to say, there are some caveats to that excitement and that positivity, and so yeah, so pretty early on, I got set up working with some of the other lecturers and with folks from the SEIU Local 500 to take part in the unionization effort.
Okay. So, Lizzie Enders is our resident Howard professor, so I'm going to let her ask you the next question.
So, fun question first. We'll get the fun, the little icebreaker first. So, your last name is Hampton. And most people in the area who are familiar with HBCUs knows that Howard and Hampton are rivals. So why not Hampton?
Why
Why
not
did you choose
Hampton?
Howard over Hampton?
I had that connection here. My friend's mom, she was teaching in the history department, and I just seen so much growing up in DC. I'd seen so much good stuff at Howard, and everyone is always excited about Howard, HU, versus HI. No offense to the Hampton folks. Well, I guess that they might take some umbrage with that, but such is the way. But yeah, it was just there was so much getting to be around the campus and just get the general energy, and then seeing people who were on campus and talking about it, I couldn't help but come to Howard. But then funny story, at Howard, one of my roommates had the last name Howard, and so at a couple of the Howard Hampton games, he was a strong guy, so he'd pick me up and carry me around, and we'd have a whole Howard versus Hampton thing.
Howard Hampton. That's funny.
I actually have a couple of students. I don't have any Hamptons in my class, but I do have a couple of students in my classes with the last name Howard, and they wear it very proudly. They always come to class with a Howard T-shirt on, Howard sweatshirt, so they are proud to be at the Mecca. So, how did you first get started with the union at Howard? Like, what propelled that?
Yeah, so when I first got to Howard, I was just sort of out of the gate having some pretty rough problems. There were just issues getting onboarded. So getting basic things like getting an email address, getting access to Blackboard, which are it's our digital teaching tool, sort of how you hand out handouts and assignments and do grading. And really importantly, I wasn't getting paid. They were saying, oh, we just don't have you in the system yet. Just wait, just wait. And so I was sort of talking around with people and trying to figure out what was going on and what I could do. And I started hearing some of my fellow lecturers talking about um, unionizing, right? They're saying that Howard lecturers had tried to unionize years before, but it had been a long time and it wasn't successful. But they were trying to push unionizing again. So they reached out to SEIU Local 500 and they were working with them. And so I sort of got to sit in on some of those early meetings. And then lo and behold, it just all came together and I started working with the effort to get unionized.
And with that effort, like what has the process been so far? So you're talking about starting in 2017. So we're 3 years out. And I started at Howard last year. So it was fall 2019. And I experienced some of the similar things that you just talked about, in which there was a delay in payment initially. And a delay in getting onboarded, and so that kind of shapes your semester, if you will, because if you're not onboarded and you don't have any email, a Howard University email address, it's very difficult for you to contact your students. So what has the process been to change some of this, to get some of this moving forward, if you will?
Yes, I mean our big effort has been sort of trying to just get the initial contract down. So a lot of unions they'll vote on whether they're going to unionize or not. We did that vote in spring of 2017, and then the next step was to start negotiating on contracts. We were all excited about the thought of what we could change at Howard that would better teachers' lives, better students' lives. Because like you said, those problems that we face also affect our students. If I can't get my email, how am I supposed to get in touch with my students in COVID times? And there are many people who had some trouble getting onboarded this year as well. In COVID times, if you can't get your email, you can't get your Zoom license. How are you supposed to hold class? It's difficult stuff. And so we were excited to sort of see things change. There are a couple other really big issues that are definitely worth talking about that we're facing. We have a 7-year cap on employment that sort of forces people out of the school after 7 years. We have really low pay. All these things, contribute not only to a rough time for lecturers, but also a rough time for our students too. And so we were thinking we were going to get to change that, talk to people, say, hey, this is what we're dealing with. You all are educators. You are administrators at Howard. You care. You want to see things changed. But when we got to the bargaining room, to the negotiating table, it was rough. They just immediately out of the gate, it was really disrespectful, really negative, really oppositional. They came in wanting to fight. And we were saying we love Howard. We're all here because we love Howard. We're all here because we have some connection here, and we Howard is unique in its mission to sort of better the world, to create leaders that can help work towards sort of social equality. That's our historic mission. That's unique among many universities, and um, they they were not of that mindset. They were of the mindset of, oh, you all are enemies. You all want to tear us down and destroy things and mess everything up. And it never quite managed to get to that point where we were having a meeting of minds with the folks from the administration, and from Howard's administration, that is. And so, yeah, we've been battling over just getting our first contract done ever since. That's been 2.5 years of that
Two and a
that
half
sort of back
years?
and forth fight. Yeah.
Wow. That is
And I also
crazy.
think it's one of those things where as soon as you say union, people get skeptical, people
Yep.
get defensive,
In the
and they
US
think
now, yeah.
in the US, yeah, and so that alone causes, like, a lot of friction even before you get to the table. As soon as the word
Yeah.
union or union rep is involved, you're already on opposite ends of the spectrum. What I like to tell people is that, again, I have only been at Howard for a year and a half now. This is my third semester. Um, I teach this semester 5 classes, which has been a little challenging, but I enjoy being at Howard because I appreciate that I am offering my students representation, that I'm giving my students an opportunity to see someone that looks like them, whether it be just because I'm a Black person or extended beyond that, a Black woman. Giving them the opportunity to see someone who is going against the stereotype or the national expectation for a Black person coming out of Washington, D.C. And on top of that, someone who can teach with a curriculum that has them in mind. And I can't tell you the number of students that I've had who've been like, okay, we didn't learn any of this in all of my, 12 years of primary and secondary school. So I enjoy teaching at Howard. I love what Howard represents. I love what Howard is. However, with a lot of great systems, there are some cracks, there are some problems, and so I don't want people to think that you and I are here to, like, kick Howard or drag Howard through the mud. We want to work together with the university to see how we can fix these cracks in the system so we can better our professors.
So I have a
And that's the one, one note, the one word that I want to get out there. Like, I enjoy my time at Howard.
Yeah,
And it was
and
always.
I,
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say, I think you and I are indicative of that, right? I'm at Howard because of the experience I had during my undergrad. You're at Howard because of your passion for it, because of your sort of what you like and hope you can offer to your students. That's all of the lecturers. That's all of us together. And people do get scared by that union title, but the reason we're here is because we need to have our voices heard. We see the president and the administration of Howard see certain things that we don't see when up at their level, but we see certain things that they don't see down at our level, where we're working directly with students every day in the classroom. Right? There's certain things that we're aware of and we're focusing on, and to run an organization well, you have to be hearing from people at all levels. And the union is not about arresting power or stealing power from anyone. That's not something we could do, and it's not something we're trying to do. But we're all about trying to make sure that people who are on the ground working with students who see what's going on in the classroom, who are guiding what's going on in the classroom, make sure their voices are heard, and that the environment is good for teaching, that the environment is good for learning, and that we aren't making some mistakes that might be made, or that we don't continue making mistakes, I should say, that are being made as far as how things are being run with the lectures.
So I have a question. So where are you currently in the negotiations? I mean, are you close to closing in on a contract? Are you far apart? Where are you currently?
So it's been a real battle. We the two big things we really fought over, and where we've sort of been stuck for basically at least 2 years. There's this 7 year cap, where it's this old strange rule that nobody can quite come up with a good explanation for, where after 7 years they have to let you go.
They have to
It
let you
doesn't
go?
like
Like,
they have to let you go. The one option is that they have the role of a master instructor, which a couple of us are lucky enough to have, but they have a very tight limit on who can be a master instructor and on how many master instructors they can have.
wait,
But
let me jump in. I want to be clear. So you're saying that in 7 years, if you've worked there for 7 years, you basically are expected to leave
If you
not
are a
only
lecturer,
expected
if you're a lecturer.
if
Okay.
you're a lecturer,
if,
but
yeah.
not only expected, the department, if the department wants you and they don't have a slot to make you into a master instructor, they have to let you go. This happened, and to give you a picture of how extreme this is, Toni Morrison was a lecturer at Howard, and at 7 years, bye.
Toni Morrison,
The late
really?
great Toni Morrison. Roberta Flack was a lecturer at Howard, 7 years,
Wow.
bye. Right? Like, so it's not even about keeping good people. We're constantly losing good people. It's really sad, actually, because those are people who are gone forever. We can't get them back at Howard. That's it. And so we have that 7 year rule that they are dead set on keeping, and that's been one of the really big sticking points. We've never really heard a good explanation of why they want to do it. We've asked them, but they never really wanted to give us an explanation. Um, Sometimes they would say a couple things about, oh, it gives us more options, but I'm not quite sure how forcing departments to let people go gives you more options, but that's a separate thing. And then the other big thing that we have a sticking point on is they're saying, you know, basically this is where money comes in. We're the least paid full-time faculty in the area by far. You know, we are at, or in some cases, depending on if you have kids or not, below the cost of living in DC. We do not get paid very well. We're not asking for anything exorbitant, but we're just trying to get up to cost of living, and we're not even quite there.
Robbie, I want to,
And
we're still talking lecturers, right? Or are we talking professors as well?
we're talking lecturers.
But
Yeah, the master
professors,
instructors are a little bit all right, but no, the full time the tenure track professors are in a different boat, right? So to help clarify a little bit, a lecturer is a non-tenure track person, right? So a lecturer works on a 1 year contract, and then they can rehire you up until 7 years, and they have to say goodbye to you. The master instructors work on a 3 year contract. The traditional idea of the professor is a tenure track professor. They have tenure. They are kept pretty much indefinitely. But we're talking about the folks who are working on shorter contracts but are still full time professors who do, you know, a full job, teach a full course load at Howard. I mean, that's a sizable number of classes.
all right. I want to let Robbie get in for a question, then I want to
Yeah.
do some
Yeah,
questions
definitely.
online.
Are the tenured professors at Howard unionized?
The tenured professors are not legally allowed to unionize. It can vary place to place, but they're not legally allowed to unionize. So the tenured professors at Howard are not unionized. No.
Okay. Are there other teaching, I'm just thinking any teaching associations or other unions that you have approached or who are lending their support? Because I understand that ratifying that first collective agreement is very difficult because that's most employers have that attitude where they feel attacked with, well, no, hey, I'm giving you a good job and you're asking for more. And it's backwards thinking because you want to enshrine what you have so that you can have a better quality life and deliver a better quality product. And the retention is so important because if you have quality people, you're adding, if education is your product, you want to add to the quality of it. So um, yeah, I'm just curious, what other labor groups have you been working with and which ones have been really instrumental in providing support?
Yeah, we've been
Also,
working with SEIU Local
I just want to throw
500.
another
Oh, go
question.
ahead.
I'm sorry, there's one other question if you can add on to that. It's similar. So Reuven Gorin online asks, have you checked with other schools, regional HBCUs, to see what they're doing regarding unions as well?
Yeah, so we've been working with SEIU Local 500, who have been doing a lot of unionizing effort for higher education. After the Obama years, there was a little bit of an opening where people who had, even though, you know, as we see in the case of Howard, a lot of people in higher ed are actually not making a ton of money. A lot of us are working in what you could say are exploited positions. And so SEIU Local 500 had an opening to be able to go, and they and a number of other sort of unions have been doing the work of unionizing with higher ed folks, especially with adjuncts. They actually unionized with adjuncts just before they started the process with us. And they've been really fantastic. Working with them, they have a lot of sort of vision of what's going on. Uh, more broadly, what's happening at other universities. Sadly, they have told us, you know, this is the most aggressive pushback they've seen from pretty much any employer, but certainly from any university. Howard is really dead set on just sort of our way is the way. And so you know, while we've been getting a lot of guidance from SEIU, they're also sort of we're all working together to try to see sort of what are other groups in the region trying to do, what are other SEIU unions in the region trying to do, and how can we sort of try to learn from that and find some way to talk with Howard. The thing I've really liked about them, they've just been really positive the whole time. Again, because I know that early that you again that truth there's a lot of truth behind that idea that people hear union and get afraid. And our whole time we've sort of always taken the stance, and SEIU has always pushed us to take the stance of like, you're at Howard because you really care about Howard. You're working with these students because you care about these students. What can we do to make this a collaborative process? And it has never been in that collaborative space. So it's really disappointing. But you know, everything that our union has done has been in concert with them, and that they've been really really fantastic.
All right.
So just quick follow up. Outside of academics, is any of the support staff on campus unionized?
There are multiple unions also functioning on campus. We've talked with them some to sort of see, and we've tried to show some support for some of them as well. But
Okay.
Howard, as a lot of universities are, can be sort of disparate. So we're not closely working together with them, especially now that COVID is happening.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a
Thank you.
ton of questions and comments online. We only have about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to try to go through a few of these, see if we can get some of these questions answered. Um, so, Jeanette Brown points out that they aren't paying for tenure. They're booting the people with experience to let in newer, cheaper people. There's innovation that comes from such a regular turnover, and that's a ton cheaper for the university, but an expense or comfort of safety or loyalty, no way to attract or retain talent. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Can I just comment on that
So,
very quickly?
oh,
Go ahead.
Like,
please, yeah.
at least for me personally, and maybe you experience this as well, Cyrus, when you are a new professor or a new lecturer coming in, you really aren't thinking 7 years down the road.
Right.
So it doesn't really occur to you that I could be dropped immediately 7 years, no matter what, regardless of if I'm the best teacher in this group, the best professor in this group, if my students love me, if I have all of this positive feedback, it wasn't something that I thought about. Like even now, I'm not really thinking about 7 or now 6 years, 6.5, 5.5 years from now, even though I probably should. But I think that's a part of the trap, if you will. And when I say the trap, I don't mean that in a malicious way on Howard's part, but it's not the thought process that when you go in, okay, I got to prepare 7 years from now that I'm not going to have a job, that I'm just going to be cut off
Mhm.
completely, regardless of my performance. And so now it's something that I think everyone is starting to think about as we put this out into the public sphere. It's just like, okay, well, what are my plans 7 years from now?
Right.
Like, do I still want to be at Howard? And if I do, how can I still retain this position at Howard if I feel that I've had an enriching experience and I want to stay with the same students?
Yeah.
Cyrus?
Yeah, and I think alongside that, yeah, like when you're first getting to a university, when you're just saying this is the same for any teachers, right? So much of teaching is sort of learning the culture of the space you're moving into. What's the culture of the students? What's the culture of the department or the school? And a lot of sort of teacher studies have shown that seniority is actually it's not one of those things where like innovation, right? We always think like fresh young blood innovation, but in the case of teachers, it's weathering, veterancy, experience. These things are really what allow for skilled teachers to be skilled teachers. That idea of the sort of like old gnarled teacher who's lost their passion, like that isn't
Yeah.
really the reality. The reality is it's that old gnarled teacher who's been through it and knows how to work with their students and knows how to work with their colleagues. That's the person you want around. And we lose that, right? We have all these good folks with lots of talent, and we lose it. So you know, I think there's something to be said about sort of that youth and that passion, but everything I've heard says that youth and passion is not the only thing, and that in fact, with teaching especially, experience and familiarity with the environment, familiarity with the department, really goes a long way towards better teaching, a better teaching environment, all of that.
All right, I want to point out Lola J on YouTube is saying you shouldn't be thinking 7 years down the road to be fair. Most folks don't aim to be career lecturers. They leverage experience profile toward their next step. However, Cyrus is a unique and increasingly present breed that integrates activism. And actually, I want to ask the question. So I know you're an activist as well. Um, so what platforms, what are you right now, what are your platforms? What are your ideals? What are you as an activist?
So my big focus right now is certainly all around education. So I've been working with the union at Howard because I really do think that the more that we can hear lecturers and teachers, the better off the learning will be for students. Um, I got to move up to the master instructor position, which means that I don't have to worry about that. For me now, 4 years down, I don't have to worry about that anymore, and that's let me really lean in to working with my students. At the same time, then I've been working with another group, one of my longtime friends from DC who has gone on and done a whole bunch of other stuff. She started a group called the Ida B. Wells Education Project, and it's all about teachers providing teachers with anti-racist teaching tools. So those two have been my big main things, right? There, it's a similar idea, right? They're saying, you know, a lot of teachers care a lot about what's going on in the world. A lot of teachers care a lot about seeing equity for their students and in their communities. And not all teachers necessarily have the training or the expertise to talk about it or to work with it. So how can we, teachers who do have that training, do have that expertise, how can we hand that off to them? And the work they're already doing is some really cool stuff, just bringing together, creating a community, creating some free teaching tools, creating some free training for K-12 teachers in particular. So those two have been my really big primary things. I've dabbled in stuff surrounding police brutality back in grad school. Way back in high school, I was doing stuff with the anti-war movement when Bush was president. So it's reaching back a ways there. But my big focus right now is definitely on education and how can we sort of like be aware of life in the classroom and use our experiences inside the classroom to better what's happening for students and all around us.
So we're out of time, but I did want to get this one last question online in. A lot of people have been talking about 7 years is crazy. Jose says that, but the administration can stay beyond 7 years, right? Monica Alicia says that's ridiculous. But Kevin Thaxton asks, eventually the tenured will need to be replaced. Why not create a pool of known assets to potentially place into those positions?
Succession.
Good point.
You'd hope that there is some sort of thought, and I imagine with the relationships we build with the departments that the departments like us. We have strong relationships with the departments. It's just when you go up above departments, up to the upper administration and the executive board and the president, that's where there's a little bit of disconnect. But I mean, there's part of what's going on here, and part of why the non-tenure folks are in such an uproar across the country right now is that those tenure track jobs they're disappearing. It is a very thin job market out there. The number of jobs where you can get tenure, where you can find that what we conceive of as a professor as that traditional professor job, it's really in many ways disappearing, and hopefully it doesn't all the way disappear. But it's certainly shrinking for right now. And so there is certainly hope. A lot of us have, and a lot of us are, our goal is to move on and see if we can find a tenure track role, but easier said than done is, I guess, the way I would put that.
Okay. There's a ton of questions and comments online, so feel free to go on to the Facebook page and make, if you'd like to. But we definitely thank you for joining us. Are there any last words that you'd like to share? Let people know how they can reach out to you or anything?
Yeah. I want to say thank you so much for having me. We do have a petition. The link is a little bit long, so maybe I can have you all share it. But if you go and you Google SEIU Howard University lecturer petition, you'll find it. But maybe I can hand it off to Lizzie or Neo or Rob D, and okay, you all can share it. But if you want to check out the petition, see some of the specifics of what we're talking about, sign it if you care about it. And share it with your own friends and community members. That would be a really great way to directly help out and just make it known that people who care about HBCUs, people who care about Howard University, care about the teaching environment and the learning environment that's happening there.
Well, again, thank you, Cyrus, so much for joining us. Great conversation. Great conversation.
Thanks so much. You all, I really appreciate it. You all having me on to talk about it, and it's been a great chance to chat with you all.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Yes, Cyrus.
Shenanigans, truth, lies, shenanigans.